Welcome to part 2 of responsive website development. Today we are going to pick where we left off in the previous video, which was making this navigation bar responsive, and the other thing was resolving the issues that we are encountering with refreshing the page. For example, currently we are on the home section as per the URL, but as you can see the home section is not highlighted. This is because we haven't yet moved our scroll bar. The respective navigation item gets highlighted once the scroll bar moves a little bit, but since it hasn't moved, so none of the navigation links are currently highlighted. So we have to fix this problem first, then we will move on to making it responsive. So let's work on that. So the way we are going to tackle this is we are going to access the path name, that is the part which comes after the domain name. So this part is the domain name. Currently it's just an IP address, but in real world scenarios it's going to be some domain name such as www.infinity.com. so this part will be that part. So anything that comes after that is called path name. So we are going to somehow access this path name through JavaScript, and based on that we will highlight the respective navigation item. Okay, so this is the current state of our JavaScript that we left off in the previous tutorial. Now over here we are going to attach an event listener with the Windows load event. So as soon as this web page is loaded into the browser, this event gets triggered. So we are going to attach this logic with that event. So window.onLoad, let's define arrow function. Now before we write any logic, let's first of all try to figure out if we are able to access that particular part. So console log. So whenever the web page is loaded in the browser, this event gets triggered, and as a result we will get a console log message, and within this message we want to print window.location.hash. So as you can see over here, it says this location.hash returns the location object's URL's fragment. So this will basically print anything from this URL which starts with hash. So because this is whole URL and it will look for hash, so anything that comes after hash it will print that. So let's see if that is the case. Refresh, and as you can see in the console log we saw this hash home. So let's click on services. Now let's refresh, and it says hash services. So that means we are able to extract this part through our JavaScript. Now that we are able to figure out which part is currently supposed to be visible in the browser window, we can manually make the scroll bar move to that part and make that section visible, as well as highlight that particular navigation link as well. So to do that, let's comment this out. Now since we have multiple sections for which we have to define the logic, so we are going to use switch statement, and to this switch statement we are going to pass in this value. Copy, paste. Now first one is case hash home, but if you notice we are not only in the home section when this hash home is attached to the URL, but also when there is no such thing followed by hash, like this. So even though there is no hash home attached to it, we are still on the home section. That means we have to make two cases when there is nothing. Now for both of these cases the logic is, let's access from the header section or the header element. Within that header element we have a child called nav with a class name nav. We can even make this one class name as well, it's up to us. Okay, then there we have anchor element, and we are interested in a anchor element with the href equals to, again making the same state, so put asterisk to make it a wildcard character. Then it should contain home. So this should be the value. Then if that is the case, select that anchor element and then class list dot add active. And then the next thing that we have to do is that if for example we are on some other sections such as contact us or about us, so we want the scroll bar to move up and bring the home section in the viewport window. So for that we are going to do document.query selector, and let's make it home. So the section with the class name home, select it and scroll into view. So we have chained in this scroll into view method. What this will do is that if this section with this class name home is not visible in the browser window, the scroll bar will move up or down depending on where that section is and where the scroll bar currently is, and it will bring this home section into the viewport window. So let's give it a try, even though we still have to define other cases, but it should work at least for the home section. So let's click on projects and refresh it. Now let's click on home, refresh, and it's highlighted even though the page got just loaded in the browser. Let's close it. Okay, Okay, so it's still highlighted even though the scroll bar hasn't moved ever since the page got reloaded. Okay, now let's click on home and still highlighted. Once more, home highlighted, home highlighted, home highlighted. So the unpredictable behavior that we saw at the end of our previous video, that unpredictable behavior has also been resolved. And just to recap that unpredictable behavior, well, actually what was happening was that when we hitting enter in the address bar, sometimes the relevant section was highlighted and sometimes it wasn't highlighted. Now, after defining the logic, that issue has also been resolved. So we have to repeat the same logic for all of these sections as well. The only thing that we have to change in that logic is change the name, the class name for that section. So that means we have to define a case. Okay, so let's break it. Now let's define a case for about section. Then let's break it. Then a case for services. Then a case for projects. And then a case for contact. Now we have to define this same logic for each of these cases. The only thing that we have to change is this value. For the about section, we have to replace this home and this home with the about. For the services section, we have to replace this with the services. So that means there is going to be a lot of repetition. So instead, what we are going to do is that we are going to define a function. And this way, we will define this logic in this function only once. And for each of these cases, we will call this function. So select nav, let's give it name, select nav, and as a parameter, let's pass it section. Let's cut it from here, paste it over here. Now we have to pass this section over here. But if you pass like this, it will turn into a string. However, we know this section is actually a variable. So in order to insert variables within the text, we have to replace these quotations with the tilde sign, the tilde symbol, which represents string interpolation. And using that string interpolation, we can insert variables within the text. Okay. Same thing over here. Let's copy this and Control V, tilde, and we have to prepend this dot for the class name. So dot, then whatever is the value of this section variable. Now we have to call this function everywhere. So for both the home section and the empty case, select nav and pass in home. Copy, and for the about section, paste and change the value to about. For the services, okay, for the projects, again paste, and projects for the contact. Okay, so currently we are on services. Let's refresh the page one more time, twice, again, and still the services is highlighted. Contact, refresh, and contact is highlighted. Okay, so that means everything is working just fine. Now let's check when there is no hash part and still the home is selected, because when there's nothing, it's empty, that is nothing after the hash or even the hash. In that case, select the home section as well. Okay, so we are done with that part. Now let's move on to making this navigation bar responsive. And to make it responsive, we have to define media queries in our style file. So we are going to define 3 media queries. The first one is going to tackle, let's first define 1200 pixels. So this is one media query, and this is going to tackle laptops and small devices. Okay. Now copy paste it. The second one is going to be 768 pixels, and it's for tablets and iPads. Then the last one is going to be 480 pixels, and this is for mobile devices. Okay, I find this mix with confusing because even though it says mix with over here, but what it actually means is that for screens which are less than or equal to 1200 pixels wide. So if any screen is greater than 1200 pixels in width, then this media query will not apply to it. We will move on to this main styles defined at the top. However, if it gets smaller than or equal to 1200 pixels, then whatever properties we define within these curly brackets, those media queries will be applied. So even though it says max width, the simple way to remember is less than. So if the width is less than or equal to 1200 pixels, the properties defined over will be applied. And if the width is less than or equal to 768 pixels, the properties that you defined over here will be applied. And if the width is less than or equal to 480 pixels, then the properties that we defined over here will be applied. So for the laptops and small devices, that is max width less than or equal to 1200, we are decreasing the font size for whole HTML document from 62.5% to 55%. So font size 55%. Now the font of whole document page has been decreased to 55%, and because for the rest of the elements we have described font, where is it? Like over here in the for the anchor elements in the header section, we have defined the font size as 2 rems. So that means this font automatically gets adjusted because the overall font size for the whole HTML page has been decreased from 62.5% to 55%. And because this rem unit is relative to the root element, that is the HTML element, so whatever is the font size of the root element, this font size is adjusted according to that font. Now since root element, that is the HTML element, its font size has been changed, therefore this font size is also changed accordingly. That means we don't have to adjust the font size of this anchor element when we are over here, because now 2 rems will be set according to this font size. So let's say this 55% means 8 pixels, so now 2 rems will be 16 pixels instead of 20 pixels. So this is the benefit of defining font size in rem units, because then we don't have to manually change the font size when we view our page on smaller devices. So let's verify if that is the case. Okay, this is 1201. Now let's decrease this, and the moment we move on to some other device, the width less than or equal to 1200, the font size of this navigation bar as well as the contents over here in the sections, their font size decreased automatically. And let's okay, now again let's go just 1 pixel down. So let me just change it over here, and you see the dramatic difference. So that's the magic of defining the font size in rems. Now we have to go to the tablets and iPads. So again, HTML font size, let's make it 50%. And let's copy this. Okay, this is 50%. And over here, let's make it 46%. Okay, so this is 1200. Now let's go to 768, and this is the font size 480, and you can see it's shrunk even further. Okay. Next, we have to make this hamburger icon disappear, and it should only be visible when we are on the iPads and tablets. So the name that we have given to the div which contains this hamburger icon is hamburger. Okay. Okay, so we are going to, let's copy first and set its display property to none. Let's copy this whole part, copy, and when we reach over here 780 pixels, so paste it, closing brackets, and reset from none to flex. Okay, so as you can see, the icon is invisible. So now it's visible, but let's go. So so it only appears when we reach 780 pixels or even less than that. So 786 should have appeared. Save it one more time. 768. Okay. 700 and now we got it. Okay. So as soon as we got less than 768 pixels, the hamburger icon has reappeared. Okay. Now once this hamburger icon appears, we don't want to see these navigation bars over here. And when we click on this icon, we want to see this drop-down menu which contains all of these navigation links. So now we have to make these changes. And to make these changes, let's define header nav. We have to set its position to absolute, because now we want this header to be the immediate parent of this navigation. And if you remember, we have given this header height 12 viewport height. So we have to make sure this drop down bar starts after this 12 viewport height. So for that, I have set the position to absolute for the navigation bar. That means this header is the immediate parent with respect to the positions. And now we are going to set its top to be 100%. So 100% of the parent. So that means it will start immediately where the header section ends. Now for the left, we want it to be pushed towards the right side. So let's make it 60%. And then width, let's give it 28 rem and see how it looks. But first change the background color to primary text color. And we want to give this box round edges. So border radius 5 pixels, slightly round edges. Okay, so this is how it currently looks. And because these are all anchor elements, that is by default they are inline elements. So we have to make their display to block as well. Copy, paste, and then anchor element. First of all, set its display to block. And now you can see they are on their respective lines. Give them some margin, 1 rem all around. Okay, I think we should push this drop down menu further towards the right because there is plenty of space over here. So what I'm going to do is that instead of setting the left, I'm going to set its right to 1%. From the right side, it's pushed 1% and total width is 28 rems. Let's see its effect. Okay, that's better. Do you think we should remove this space as well? So let's simply set it to 0. Yeah, I think that's better. Now we have to change the colors of this text. So color is okay, that's better. Now the menu icon which is highlighted is invisible. So we have to change its color so that it's visible. So only when it's selected. So copy, paste, and when it has the active class attached to it, set its color to, let's change it to this outline color. Okay, so this is visible. Okay, we should give it some padding all around so it's slightly bigger. So header, nav, let's give them padding. Padding all around top and bottom, let's make it 1 rem and all around 1 rem. Okay, that's better now. Now we have to make this disappear as well. Only when we click on it, this should get visible. So to do that, first of all, we have to set its display to none. So display is none. Then we have to add and remove active class dynamically through JavaScript. So to do that, we have to define the active class for this. Copy, paste, and display is block. Okay, so now let's go to JavaScript and attach and remove this class dynamically when we click on the hamburger icon. So we have to target this hamburger div. Document or query selector, and we have to access nav element in the header section. Now hamburger dot on click. Sorry, this is not nav element, it's hamburger. So the hamburger, which is a child of header element, we are getting reference to that one, and then we are attaching a click event with it. So when the hamburger icon is clicked, we want the nav bar to appear or disappear. So have we got already a link to the nav bar? These are nav links. We don't have a link to the nav bar. Okay. Let's first of all get the nav bar reference. So document query selector header, then nav, and let's put it as a global variable, as a global constant. So paste it over here, and over here navbar dot class list dot toggle active. So this toggle means if the active class is already attached to this navbar, remove it, and if it's not there, then attach it. So what will happen is that if this navbar is invisible and we click on the hamburger icon, the drop-down menu will be visible, which contains the navbar, which is actually the navbar. And if it's visible and we click it one more time on the hamburger icon, this drop-down menu will disappear. So let's go and test it out. Okay, click it and it's visible. Again click it and disappear. Click it. Okay, so this is also working. The next thing that we have to work on is to make sure the sections start right after the navigation bar. Currently the starting point of a section is behind this navigation bar right over here. So we have to now fix this problem. The reason this section starts behind the navigation bar rather than after this navigation bar is that we have set the display property of this header section to fixed, and when we set the display property of any element to fixed, it comes out of the normal flow of the web page and it's like in a separate universe. So in a separate universe, this header section is the first element of the browser, and because now the rest of the elements, which are sections in our case, so they are in the default flow of the web page, and in that default flow the section is actually the first element of this window because both of these elements are in separate dimensions. With respect to the position fix, header is the first child, so it starts from the top left position of the browser, and with respect to the normal flow, the sections, which are in fact inside the main element, so we are actually talking about the main element. So main element is the first child, so it also places itself with respect to the top left corner of the browser window. So now we have to make sure this main element always starts after this 12% viewport height. So for that, let's go to styles and let's go to after the header section. So let's define the main element and set its position. We can give it position relative as well, because relative means where the main section was supposed to come originally, from that position we are going to set top 12% viewport height, left 0, let's give it width 100%, and let's see its effect. Okay, now you can see this H1, that is the section title, is also visible. So by setting the position relative to the main and then bringing it down 12%, we are now able to see the starting point of the section. But there is one more problem. When we click on these elements, this header section, this scroll bar doesn't take into consideration that 12% height of this header section. So we have to make sure that even when we click on these navigation items, the scroll bar also makes sure that it puts 12% cushion between the section and this navigation bar. So to do that, let's go up, and remember we had defined this property but commented out. So now we have to put 12% viewport height, and hopefully now the scroll bar will also respect that 12% height that is reserved for the header section. Okay, now I refreshed and the title is visible. Now let's click on about section. So scroll bar is also respecting that 12% height, and it's not scrolling further high, rather it's putting that 12% cushion such that our starting position of a section is also visible. Okay, now before we move on to defining these sections and styling, there is one more thing that we need to work on, which is, if you remember this 12% viewport height is the height that we have given to our navigation bar, and we have already used 12% viewport height at many different places in the CSS, which is, as you have noticed, we have given 12% viewport height to this navigation bar, and then we had to make sure the main element, which contains all of these sections, we had to make sure it also comes after 12% viewport height, and then we had to give the cushion 12% viewport height to the scrolling bar position as well. That means a lot of different elements are being affected by what is the height of this navigation bar. We have already used it almost 3 times that 12% viewport height, and we are definitely going to use it at multiple different places as we continue this project. So once a value is used multiple times, it's always a good idea to define a variable for that value as well. This way, later on, if we change the viewport height from 12% to, let's suppose, 13% or 10%, then we don't have to manually make changes to every place where we have used that 12% viewport height. We simply have to make the changes one place, and the rest of the elements will automatically get modified. So let's go to the top, okay, over here, and let's define nav height 12% viewport height. Okay, now let's copy this and look for 12% viewport height. Over here, let's use the var nav height. Search next one, height is third one over here. Okay, so we have updated all the 12% viewport heights everywhere and replace it with this variable. Now let's go and see if it's working properly. I think it's working properly. Okay, let's click on services and we can see this contact. Okay, so I think it's working properly. Now we are ready to start working on the sections. But I think since we'll be working on a completely different element other than the header section, so we should start afresh in the new video. So this is the end of this video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe and share. Thank you so much. Happy coding.